GM, GM, everyone. Welcome to a new start of the week. It's early for me as I am back in the US, back in California. So it is 8:33 a.m. here on the West Coast in Cali. Yeah, it's been a few days. We took Friday off as I was flying, and then essentially just took the weekend to kind of get everything in order and in place, so I could get right back into our wonderful, wonderful flow. And it's been great because we had a really, really valuable trip over to Europe. It was about building connections, optimizing for partners, and also getting clarity on the strategy. And that kind of really comes to the core conversation today about, how we find our vibe in a bear. This bear market still continues to maintain bear, but we are starting to see life in a few small projects and a few new mints that can give us a little bit more clarity on what could be our operating thesis in this market. And that's what all of us should be doing in a bear. We should now be using this time to reflect where it's not about this urgency or this concept of FOMO, right? It's rather a much more intentional opportunity to pick and choose the projects, the founders, and potentially the categories we want to be a part of and aligned with over the long term. And in this kind of clarity, it allows you to really spend time, really understand the groups, the clusters, the leaders, the visionaries, the project, the pace, the evolution. All those answers are available to you. You can legitimately sit and ask and wait and evaluate every project in this market, whether it be a blue chip, whether it be a new mint, whether it be a mint that was forgotten that you believe can come back. All of those are now available for us to kind of, look through. So what I want to do is I want to share with you guys how is Tribe doing that? And then I want to give you guys a reflected framework on how I'd recommend you guys to look at it, right? And it's again building our own frameworks cuz this is probably the biggest advantage about, being close to Tribe at the moment right now. We get a very, very wide spectrum of access. This is what Tribe is really, really good at. We get to see everything. We get to have in depth founder conversations. We get to have builder conversations. We get to get different insights from different angles. And we also get fairly transparent views on everything. And here's the best part, we don't really shill, right? The goal isn't here to shill anything, it's rather to present opportunities for each of you to organically find, right? Tribe is very lucky and thankful to have our hands in a multiple different pots of web3. And because of that, it means that we are taking a portfolio approach. This is what Tribe's thesis is really comes down to. We believe in the value of on-chain assets, right? We believe in the value that these on-chain based assets will grow in value over time, but also the businesses that run these will also grow in value over time. Not all of them will grow at the same pace. Not all of them will deliver the expected value. But we believe that over time, if we're able to hold a quality thesis, we will see healthy successes that will be overwhelmingly more successful than the losses that we endure. And when we say losses, this is more of like what you would see traditionally an angel investor thesis would be, because that's what you have to understand where we kind of all are. We're at like the front lines of new markets that 99% of the world does not understand yet. And that's kind of amazing and crazy all at the same time. And what do I mean by that? Well, the reason why it's so amazing is that we're actually seeing new concepts of consumer technology open up and be accessible to us before the rest of the world. We get to see new frameworks, new ideas, new concepts come to life before 99.99% of the world. That is a huge advantage to be in the trenches right there and be able to kind of experience this product. But what's crazy about it is that 99% of these projects are probably going to fail, right? If we look at statistically the odds of what like angels based tech startups look like, you're usually looking at like a 94 to 96% failure rate, right? So that's the crazy part. We're going to have to churn through a lot of shit before we find something that really sticks. And that's also going to make us feel crazy, right? Because you're going to see all the hype and there's probably numerous projects that if you look back in the last 18, 24 months that you were incredibly hyped on. You believe they were going to be the future. You believe that they were going to sustain. You believe they were going to cross the chasm. But unfortunately, one problem came from one place, another problem came from another place, and sooner than later, you start realizing the floor is closer to zero, right? And this is kind of the other important thing here is that most of this market is generally like too greedy and too optimistic without doing diligence. And this is kind of the biggest challenge here is that when you're dealing with all of those elements in the trenches, it's hard to look up and play the long-term game. And that's where, again, this is where the thesis needs to be really understood. So for Tribe, it's actually very easy for us to operate, right? We almost optimize for zero short-term outcomes, right? Tribe's operating thesis is all about long-term compounding plays. And that's how almost any healthy business should be looking at. Of course, there's like short-term sustainable goals, but they're never optimized for that, right? We are optimizing for the long-term plays. And when we look at that, that means that we get a lot more clarity in our thesis. So, what are we trying to do with the clarity in our thesis? We're trying to understand what verticals and categories make sense, right? This is the largest challenge that you have to figure out is which categories of products are you going to go after? So traditionally, when you look at the individuals who are focused on short-term elements, most of the short-term projects are usually geared towards PFPs. And let's be very honest, PFPs are probably the least successful projects in this bear at the moment right now. Traditionally, it was the most successful in the bull. But what you're running into as well in this kind of short-term market is that there's really not enough capital and velocity for short-term flips to sustain. And you're also not seeing the crazy run, right, of most of these projects where, in the first bull we were able to see mints at 0.01 get to, 5 ETH floors, right, or 3 ETH floors. Those days are long gone. So then the question begs is where's the value in PFPs? It's really more about now the short term flip. It's understanding where in day 1 through day 14 is the volume going to dry up and how do you get in and how do you get out? And that becomes a real large challenge. So what you have to do is you have to build something sustainable beyond the PFP. And this is where this market isn't ready. This market has really struggled because our thesis at Tribe has been very simple. You need individuals with operating experience who have an understanding of how to manage a multifaceted business and are willing and able to get in the trenches and drive a revenue stream behind it. That's what we're betting on. We want to bet on those builders who recognize that they have to find a path to a sustainable revenue model within the next 12 months. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to find people who have conviction, execution, team, operating capital, and patience, right? And this becomes a real hard element in this market to find. Finding all those variables in a single founding team is very rare. It is truly like finding the needle of the haystack, right? This is kind of why there's a huge challenge in this market is because very few people recognize what it takes to build any type of company. And this is actually the first failure point of Web3, right? The first failure point of Web3 was we failed the diligence standard. What ended up happening with Web3 is that we wanted to chase short term gains, that we started to overlook, right? Massive diligence questions, right? What was the biggest thing that we deviate from early stage venture investing is that we've been putting as a collective industry millions, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of capital, right? And what becomes the largest challenge behind this is that we put all these hundreds of millions of dollars of capital as NFT holders without doing really any diligence on these projects, on these founders, understanding what they're capable and not capable of. Rather, right, we were in this roadmap era. And this roadmap era essentially just was really about us looking at, oh, look at these 2 pages for their random roadmap. I think this is good. Let's bet on that. And that's really where the challenge ends up coming is that it wasn't about are you able to execute on your vision? The bet was, were you telling enough good story to allow us to mint and flip this in a 30, 60-day window across that roadmap? And then we'll let the wheels fall off on this project. And that's incredibly a very disappointing process to be in, but we tolerated it. We tolerated it because there were so many other short-term gains along the way that we started to chase the capital. What ended up coming in and what becomes the largest challenge here is that humans are greedy, right? All humans are greedy. And the greed is clouding the actual technology here as well. Exactly, as Ray notes, right? Everyone was building a metaverse. There were tons of companies who believed they could build a game but had no game development experience. There are tons of people who believe they could build an animated series but had no clue what the production time and cost investment would be here as well. And this is like where you're seeing long term, the challenge continues to be across the market is that almost everyone didn't understand what it took to build a business. And when we didn't understand what it took to build a business, we still were unfortunately blindly allocating our capital and time to the wrong operators, right? Or operators that did not have a high chance of success. And this is where you want to reflect. This is where you want to understand, okay, if I can be a better allocator of capital and an allocator of time, I may be able to have a better and, collector thesis than most of my contemporaries. Don't get me wrong, there's still always going to be short-term plays in any market, but the short-term plays will dry out. And look, when it did dry out in this bear, what did we see? We saw 93% of the market gone, just gone, right? And this is kind of what's insane is that, when you look at this, is that when real building started to happen and we shifted to a long term holder thesis or a more patient mode, right? 90% of the quote unquote NFT collector market disappeared. Right. And what does that mean then? Well, what it means is that we've actually created one of the biggest flaws that comes with crypto. it is one of its biggest strengths, but it is one of its biggest weaknesses. And that is the financialization of assets. Because once you have greed in humanity and you bring financialized value into the play, everyone then has an opinion or is optimizing for capital extraction, right? And this is kind of where this entire challenge comes in, is how do you build long term when you have impatient, greedy extractors? Right? And I'm not saying that greedy extractors or impatient greedy extractors are like a bad type of human. That is humanity. Humanity, especially in times of economic turmoil, will get greedy, will be short term, will be looking for extraction. So we can't ignore this. But the question then is, how do you build anything long term? Well, the truth is, you have to fight upstream. You have to massively, massively go against the grain, go against the flow of the market. And that's a hard, hard challenge to do, right? And this is where Tribe is trying to do things differently. Tribe is trying to build not an alpha network, but rather a community. Tribe is trying to find a portfolio of projects that are mixed with first party, second party, and third party relationships, where we're building our own projects, we're incubating and quote unquote launching our own co collaborative projects with partners in Village. And then, of course, we have our extended reach and something is minting because we want a diversified portfolio, right, in this market. And that's where it gets really powerful, is that when we start scaling this out, we're going to give ourselves large reach. And why does reach matter in an initial portfolio? Well, the way that we believe our thesis will work is that as we go to a wide, wide market, right, and have this type of coverage, we'll be able to better spot opportunities to double down. And that's effectively what good operators, good capital allocators, good long term holders are looking to do in any type of market. And we're no different when we look to Web3. And this is the hardest challenge to kind of understand, right? Is that very, very few people are able to put aside the greed and focus on the long term thesis. That, what you're trying to now figure out here is that in this portfolio, what Tribe openly will acknowledge is we do not know what the tipping point will be in this market. That's actually like a very important thing to understand. Anyone who claims to believe or know exactly what the tipping point will be for the next bull is lying to you, right? Because they have no clue. No one has any clue. We're in such uncharted waters, right? An uncharted path that it could come from anywhere. It could be, some people believe it's Starbucks or Nike coming in. A lot of people believe it's still Web3 gaming. A lot of people still believe that, the rise of Azuki or Yuga will be the next, focus. There's lots of people who believe it'll be DeFi. There's a lot of people who believe it will be social networks, right? The idea is that it could be any of these. It's about who can fulfill a viral core loop that is sustainable and enduring. And what we're running into right now is that we've got lost into the casino game. And this is actually like the other really big insight to understand, is that we've tolerated Web3 to become just another casino, right? And why is this like a really tough category to sustain? Is that when we are trying to turn this into a casino, there's almost very little long-term strategy that is useful in a casino, right? What it is that almost all of us are stuck trying to play slots, right? And we're trying to max mint slots again, right? And we're just trying to max play slots. This is the primary strategy of complacent gamblers. right? That's what they do. They are literally going to go put in max tokens and just hit the slot machine over and over and over and over again, hoping they hit it big. But it's actually the worst edge and percentages to play. That is the worst game to play in casinos. It is literally the worst odds, the worst winning percentages, the worst everything. If there's one thing I could tell you is never play slots. But that's all that we're doing in NFTs right now. We're stuck playing slots. And what are we trying to do at Tribe? Many of you guys know I come from a poker background. What am I actually trying to do? Is that I'm trying to slowly mature you guys into games where you're not playing versus a house that you are effectively always going to lose against in the long term, right? That's what we're all playing. We're all playing a game where the only people making money are extractors, right? Bad builders of shitty casinos that are tricking you to come in with their short-term roadmap and the belief that their casino is going to be the next thing. And guess what? It's not the next thing, but they take all your primary capital and extract, and there's no compounding build value. And this is the reason why Web3 is partially doomed. The amount of capital that is going into Web3 versus the amount of capital that is actually being used to build Web3 are two very different numbers. And that's disheartening. That is where the breakdown happens, right? What is the actual challenge? The biggest challenge that we're running into overall is that everything that we put in, almost 40 to 60% of it is getting siphoned out. Guys, that is the most inefficient funnel in the world. That is awful. That is the reason why we continually to get stuck. We're not only funding the wrong capital allocators, we're funding the wrong, builders, but what's worse is that majority of that capital never even gets to being built. The amount of money that has been taken through a one-way relationship is dooming this industry. And there needs to be significantly better standards on who you partner and who you build with. And this is why Tribe is hard on the partners that we do try to bring in, or why we might be hard on partners we choose to pass on. You guys all know about our wonderful cart party days, right? It's not because I'm rooting for cart party to fail. What it is that I don't like cart party giving false signals to the market of success. That is manipulation in a market. And more manipulation of this market is only going to wreck us all. Tribe is not chasing profits at all cost, but 99% of this market is. And that is the problem. That is exactly the core problem, because when 99% of the market is only choosing profits, we will never build anything long-term sustainable. Because, guys, when you're trying to build a business, profitability is one of the hardest things to achieve, right? And if we're trying to force profitability right at the start of these businesses, what is it going to turn into? It's bad casino or bad Ponzi economics. That's it. Every major startup needed time to cook. And when we say cook, I'm not saying, hey, let's give them 2 weeks. I'm talking about like, oh, we need 2 years, right? And this is the problem, is that we've primed the number one Web3 consumers that are here at the start, at the inflection point. We've primed them still to be short-term thinking. Almost the vast majority, even if you Tribe, we're doing our best to kind of re-educate at times, but almost everyone is focused on what is the next floor price threshold of a given asset, right? It's not understanding, so like let me give you a framework delta that will maybe help some of you guys. Many of you are asking, "Oh, when will this hit the next, floor price threshold?" Right? And if I believe it will be soon, I will buy in or I will hold longer to be able to exit at that point. Right? That is what majority of traders are utilizing some type of framework to make their decision. What Tribe is really trying to ask is which of these projects can build a sustainable and hit a sustainable, healthy floor while maintaining that floor as they have the ability to cook in a 6 to 12 month window. How do we find those projects? That's our actual thesis. So, what is Tribe really trying to prioritize with a lot of our village partners? We're trying to find partners who've already been building in the trenches for the last 6 to 12 months. And they're going to be able to bring a product experience that will be activated within not only the next month or next 2 months of their initial launch, but there's a bigger game being built within the first 6 months, right? Or within the first 12 months. So we want to build products that can build that type of alignment with their users. And if you could start finding that holder alignment, some really special stuff starts happening. And there's great builders who are able to do this. Like, you guys know I speak really highly of Luca. I think Luca at Pudgy Penguins is by far I mean I'm going to be very bold and say this. I don't even know if there's any other real builder in Web3 outside of Luca. It's a very, very bold statement. And when I say real builder, what I mean is that a real builder that has gone into sustainable, deployable revenue with an understanding of how to compound that through the next era. He's really only done that. And yeah, Zion, you bring up a great point. He says, "Can you imagine if Nike only had one, people refused to buy their shoes again?" Right? Imagine they only had 1 month, right? 3 months, 6 months, right? They'd all be dead, right? Same thing. Even Discord, right? I talk about this app. Many of you might know that Discord was actually a mobile MOBA. It was a tablet based MOBA trying to compete with the likes of League of Legends, trying to build a tablet based game. The game was called Fates Forever, right? And they raised a lot of money. They tried to build this game and it was a total dud. It was a total dud. No one cared about it. Totally dead, gone. Yeah, it's called Fates, Fates Forever. Fates Forever was the name of the game. I have old screenshots. I saw this. I was lucky to meet Jason Citron in the early days, who's the founder and CEO of Discord now. But imagine if we didn't even give up. I mean, it took them 1 to 2 years to build the MOBA for tablet devices. Failed. If this was Web3, that company was dead. That company was probably dead 3 months in, right? It wasn't even going to have any chance to be able to have any breathing room. Now look at where Discord is today, right? And now Discord is at a $10 billion valuation, right? And there's so many companies that have very similar stories where they went in one direction and you didn't get and they had to pivot somewhere else. This is actually one of the most important things to understand about business building. The vast majority of successful startups started as a different idea on day one. They had to have room to pivot, right? Literally had to have room to pivot to another idea, right? Like, and there were a lot of crazy Airbnb, if you remember them, right? Huge business. They were once selling cereal as a company, right? They were selling, I think it was Obama O's, right? They literally were selling cereal at one point in their company, right? Like crazy, crazy backgrounds, right? And you could see this with numerous verticals as they were trying to find their product market fit. right? And this is kind of why it's so hard to sustain because the expectations of Web3 holders is insane. The problem is, and this is the actual true problem, is that you must have a different role between a consumer versus a capital allocator. When they become the same person, it's one of the hardest things to combat because they don't know how to actually base their relationship between those two. And this is the beauty when you're a venture backed startup, right? Is that if you do have the opportunity to raise capital, those investors are giving you feedback as investors, as allocators to your business. They understand a need to pivot. They understand the need to accelerate or decelerate an idea. They are working on your behalf. But again, if you were talking to a consumer during that time period, they would be incredibly upset, right? If a pivot or something changed because they do not have the knowledge of what it takes to build a business. And that's where we've gotten stuck here in Web3. We have all these people who become capital allocators to projects who believe they understand what is in the best interest for those projects as well when they have zero clue. Literally zero clue, right? Almost all of these individuals have no understanding of what it takes to run a business. If you ask the question here, right? Like I'll ask it here to this audience, right? Raise your hand if you've ever raised venture capital and operated a business as a founder. If you've ever raised venture capital and operated a business as a founder, co-founder, anything like that. Raise your hand if you fall into that category. Um At the moment, there's not a single hand raised. Oh, we got one. No, he hit it. There was one and not a single one. Nope. So this becomes like the hardest challenge. The next group is actually Steven's kind of noting it is like how many business as yourself, as a sole proprietor where you ran business, generated revenue, and scaled. That's where you start seeing more sophisticated investors come in. And that's a second group that's actually still very meaningful to have. So, there's like five hands kind of went up around that. But again, we're looking at a group of 400. What you're seeing is 350 to 390 of us have never been operators of businesses, have never gone from 0 to 1. Yet we have expectations on how everyone else should go 0 to 1. And this is where this false dichotomy gets created because you then have capital allocators who believe they know what best on behalf of your business, even though they have no experience in doing it. It's the blind leading the blind. And don't get me wrong, this is still a problem on both sides. We have really bad operators, really bad capital allocators, right? Really bad founders, to be very honest. And when I say bad, I'm not saying maliciously bad. I'm saying bad in terms of lack of experience, right? So we fund them. And then the worst part is that we as capital allocators who've been a part of those projects almost have no understanding of business building and what it takes to go from 0 to 1, yet we're expecting the moon and beyond in less than 90 days, right? In literally less than 90 days. And this is kind of the biggest challenge overall in this market is everyone, right, is still not understanding, right, the challenge, right? Like no one understands how difficult it is to navigate a market with those two variables. You have inexperienced builders, you have inexperienced capital allocators, and they're all coming together to kind of build something super novel and super hard. And let's be very honest, that's probably not the recipe I'd want. That's not how I would want to kickstart a revolution of this market, right? And this is kind of the other hard thing. And you're right. And Burger Bucks, you bring up the other biggest problem, right? is being a holder and user commitment isn't rewarded by the projects in Web3, right? And that's exactly then the third problem. And we've talked about this a lot at Tribe, right? And this becomes like the bigger challenge as well, is this entire space has not found a way to reward long-term holders, right? And because of that, this is the other challenge here, is that if we can't find a way to reward long-term holders, and we are all going to go to zero. Because what it is that this game of Web3 still incentivizes short-term plays. And that's where my heart breaks. It really does. And the reason I tell you this is that if you economically look at the best quote unquote capital allocation strategy, collector strategy in this space, the best thing here, right? The best thing here to do is mint and flip, right? You should always flip in the first 7 days according to the historical math, right? Especially in this bear, right? Because almost all volume dies by like day 5 or day 7, which fucking sucks. So if you go the full round trip, you get no bonuses, you get no rewards, you get no sustainable value as well. It almost always goes down, right? And yeah, you could look at it with even, top projects. Sugartown got to point 0.4, right, in the first 7 days. Now a little bit slowing down to 0.27, 0.28. Don't get me wrong, still very good. Give them credit. They're still executing. It's still very blind. We're gonna see where it goes, right? But what was the peak play there for Sugartown? It was mint and flipping in the first 7 days at its peak, or 7 to 10 days. They got actually way more volume than almost any other project. So again, give them credit. They deserve a lot of credit. Whatever they were doing, they tapped into an audience, whether it be the Zynga name, the way they presented the project, it seemed to collect enough hype for it to sustain. And this is the hardest challenge, right? Is that what is going to happen to those who hold and sustain long term? So this is where we're going to see a few projects try to solve this, right? So this is going to be something where you're going to look at guys like Grapes. Grapes, it's going to be this huge element of, if you held since mint, there's going to be greater token allocation for you, right? Which is interesting. And then there's some compounding factor, right, as well behind that. But it's also very brutal, right? Because, yeah, if you sell, you'll lose it all. So it's also this forced mechanic because there's no middle ground. And this is kind of why I'm really challenging the overall market, is that if you recognize, if we cannot find a way to shift incentives to long-term holders, we are doomed, right? And this happens to big projects, right? And what was one of the biggest things that I saw was, the biggest issue was even with Azuki. So I had a lot of communication with the Zuki holders, but specifically with Spirit DAO holders, right? And if you're familiar with Spirit DAO, they're probably they are the most powerful community-based DAO, which is pretty compelling to take a look at, right? Really interesting there. But what was really unique about Spirit DAO as well is that they were holding up the floor of the outlier assets, right? They were holding these huge premiums of holding spirit based, right? Which is a trait in the Ether collection. And they were usually trading at like 10x, 20x, 30x floors at certain times, which is crazy, right? Just that the idea of owning a spirit would have that type of multiplier against the floor. But what was so brutal for the Spirit DAO holders, was that on the Elementals mint, they were treated as just the same as any other holder. It was a 1-to-1 allocation. It was based off how many did you hold. That's it. They did not care what was the weight of the assets you were holding. They did not give any other incentives on holding spirits. They gave no incentives of holding any other specialized traits in that next claim. And what it felt to a lot of Spirit DAO holders is that it was a big middle finger to them. They got almost no incentive of holding the premium floor. They almost got no incentive for buying multiples higher than the floor. They actually realized the better economic strategy, assuming that Elemental's floor worked, right? But even if it didn't, even if Elemental's floor is where it is today, the better economic strategy was always buying floor ETH by buying floor Azukis, right? By buying floor ETH based assets, right? And that's brutal. That's like the last thing you want your VIP whales to feel is like, why did I spend so much money on this? I should have just bought the cheaper shit, right? And then of course it was a kick, a hard kick to a lot of them when they felt the art was so similar. It led to a lot of challenges. But this is the exact problem. A company that has millions of dollars failed to recognize the delta and the value of their holders. And there was also no time based value either. So if you minted and held a Azuki NFT, there was no difference between you or someone who literally bought the NFT the day before, right, the claim or the snapshot. And this is kind of the overall problem now is that in the end, all of the actions of this market point to one big thing, right? They're literally pointing to the same issue of don't buy rares, buy floors, right? And that's a bad investor thesis to put out there or collector thesis to put out there in the market because what it's telling us is that there's no reason to invest in quality or depth in long term projects. That's what the entire market has told us thus far. And this is where I think lots of projects need to rethink their definition of loyalty, right? Like lots of these projects need to figure out how can they truly connect with these individuals and really build an order of value for those that are incredibly rare. And even for us at Tribe, we're figuring this out, right? We have diamonds. I think we've done a great job in making diamond holders feel premium to this ecosystem due to the fact that they have bought in at 1,000x higher than the rest of the community, right? A diamond versus soul cost. Yeah, very different, right? It's a very interesting delta. But we have to even go further, right? There's deltas in values of diamonds, which we're right now figuring out. There's deltas in multiple holders of diamonds, which we have different rewards and gains. There's deltas in holding multiple souls. There's deltas in also being engaged with relics. This is what Tribe is actually trying to solve. We are finding a holistic way to measure your on chain participation and reward you for that as well. And I'm not saying that we're going to be perfect at this, but what we are trying to show you is that is actually our goal because we care. I care about the multiple you may have brought in as an allocator to the project, right? I care way beyond that. And here's the crazy thing almost everyone who has bought a diamond, right? That money did not come to us if you bought through secondary, right? We don't even enforce royalties. Like, we don't care about that. I actually want this to be as cheap as possible for the buyers to come in to this ecosystem. So there are people who are buying diamonds at 3 ETH, 4 ETH, 5 ETH, but we never sold it at those prices, right? And that's kind of the crazy thing is that we now have to build and sustain value at a secondary price point as well too, which is another big challenge. But we're not ignorant of that. It's one of the hardest builder challenges you will ever have to run into. And this is what Tribe now needs to understand is that everyone has come in at different price points and thresholds. We now need to find a way to deliver that value for long holders, long-term holders, large holders. So we're even looking at time-based metrics, quantity-based metrics, right? Price of entry, engagement to our community, This is actually what Tribe is trying to do. We're actually trying to grab all of these elements, bring them in together, and allow each of you guys to truly be rewarded based off your relationship in our world, based off where this market can truly go. And that's why I get so excited about where we're going, is because we're actually trying to solve this problem. And this is where, again, what's great about data on our metrics is our diamonds are fairly long-term holders. We're still figuring out all those details to create more incentives. And to be honest, shout out to our diamond holders being incredibly patient. Our diamond holders are incredibly aligned, incredibly patient, incredibly valued, and we now need to turn on the jets for them. We now need to turn on the jets for soul holders as well. And that's what this next era is going to be. This next quarter, you're going to see two big things really be optimized for us and keeping pace in a bear. First is soul utility starts getting realized at another level, right? Your relics, your pendants, your souls, all are going to combine for rarity factors, right? And I think that's really important because it's also going to give you guys identity access. And you will see the concept of the port key, right? Coming through in this kind of market, which I think is going to be really exciting for the way that we're trying to build this. It is really going towards this, challenge in this market of how do we actually build sustainable utility across the board, even though the market remains bear. But the second thing we have to really get right is that we need to make sure that there's more premium allocation coming to diamonds, both through third party, second party, and first party partners. If we can find a unique way to deliver that across the board, we then have an opportunity to really make this engine run. And that's what we're trying to now get to, because Tribe is hitting that point of, cash flow positive is actually what the real terminology is, right? We use the word profitable, but it's not actually the right term. The right term is cash flow positive, right? Meaning that there's technically more revenue being generated than burned to the business. Does that mean that we're truly profitable? No. There's other costs that come in. There's other ways of measuring that. There's other salaries. There's more recruitment and there's more growth. But because we're cash flow positive, what is the nice thing about this is that it doesn't mean that we're eating into our treasury. And not eating into our treasury is really important. And what's actually interesting is, let me give you the breakdown of like where Tribe roughly is in this market. So Tribe, in let's say roughly 12, 13 months, that's kind of what the timeline has been. Let's say 12 months for the sake of ease and conversation, right? Tribe has generated roughly around 500,000 in primary sales, right? Via NFT sales, and this is through diamonds and soul at the moment right now, right? Alongside that, Tribe has also generated over $250,000 in revenue in services based fees, right? And then alongside that as well, Tribe has now built an NFT asset treasury that is worth, if we're looking at the numbers today, like it's probably worth another 250 ETH, so like $400,000, right? And what's really cool there is that in that kind of structure, we in 1 year have generated well over $1 million of value in this entity. That's actually an incredibly healthy startup and business compared to 99% of organizations out there, right? There's way healthier businesses. And what's great though, and why we think we're incredibly healthy, is that we haven't been extractive. right? We haven't been extractive at all. And this is kind of the nice little thing of what we're trying to build is because we're not putting you guys all underwater. This is the biggest flaw of the market is that they believe that the primary revenue that comes in, right, is that what everyone doesn't understand is that they're all running into being underwater. Like, what is Yuga's biggest challenge? Yuga's biggest challenge is almost all their recent mints are underwater, right? The only people who are profitable are from the previous era of apes, right? Don't get me wrong, incredibly valuable if you were there. But ever since that, it's been exactly as Zion notes. It's just been dilution. Numerous dilution layers coming in. It's a very hard part. But also it's on other side, they sunk $300 million in cost. Like there's $300 million of primary capital they asked for holders into a product experience that you've only had 2 test demos on. Is that what you really want the future of Web3 to potentially look like? Is that the right type of capital allocation and reward structure you're seeking? Especially considering those assets are now all massively underwater, right? It's a really, really tough scenario for that. But it's a tough scenario for a lot of people, right? Even our partner projects, right? Like when we look at Ether, Ether still has to clear its initial mint price. It's an area that is a real challenge. They have to walk up to that, or, these users are all still primarily underwater. The good thing is they actually have an opportunity to move forward, right? It's why we're bullish. It's why we think there's opportunities there, but it's still a really hard challenge. And if we keep going to almost all these other projects, we start realizing almost everyone else is underwater as well. Tribe has avoided that. This is actually one of the biggest things that I'm actually super proud about Tribe. We could have extracted the fuck out of this. We could have. Like I'm not even joking. Like we could have done CSR racing, right? Which was the mobile game I worked on. We could have done a web 3 version of that with Fury, right? We could have done that in 2022, right? I had a whole teaser trailer ready for Fury, a full render trailer with all these art. Like we could have easily pushed that out with our hype and where diamonds prices were. We could have easily pushed that shit out, right? And boom, like you would have seen very quickly, we could have brought in 3 million to 5 million of primary funding. But the problem would be is that all those assets would be underwater, right? They would. There's no way we would have been able to sustain that in this market. And what you can see is that, it's not that, here, I'll even show it to you guys. This is from literally well over a year ago. This was the original trailer. None of these numbers, don't take any of this as like as stuff that we're planning to launch anytime soon. It is a totally different world. But we decided personally not to push our products out when we didn't believe the market could sustain them. Right? It did not matter how much primary capital we could have bring. It was more about could I justify the value return to those who would participate. So here's like a quick 30-second trailer. There's a full 2-minute trailer of Fury that no one's seen. And you could see how dated this shit is because I fucking put Little Lemon Friend, right? Like if you look at the end of the trailer, spirit, there's a bored ape, there's all these different elements, right? Like, dude, we had this ready. We could have easily done it. Yeah, we could just call it Boy. I actually own, like, sadly, one of the worst buys I've ever made in my era. I own one of like the Genesis Little Lemons, so that's the one that's actually in there. I'm gonna gift it to Lemon Boy so that he could have that little character with the sticker. It just feels like this would be there. And exactly, Zion, right? This was a perfect trailer to pump the floor to wherever you want. And then, like I said, I had a whole nother 2-minute trailer ready to go. And like people still don't recognize we made the hard decision to sideline this shit. Like, super hard decision to sideline this at the moment. Like, I don't just have a trailer, I have all the car models ready to go, could be minted as NFTs. You could all mint one of one cars. There's a full website fully done, there's a full playable game loop, like, it's at an alpha stage. It would not be something I would wanna push bluntly wide open to the market, but we actually have that all done. We had Web3, we had Web3 custom paint jobs, we had a garage scene, we had all of this stuff. But we chose not to do it because this market A was not going to actually value long-term building, and B, I did not want you guys to be underwater through a paid mint from us. So we shifted our entire thesis through this market. Even Lost Realms, right? Like, if you were here in the early days, like, Lost Realms was always supposed to be a paid mint, right? Lost Realms initially designed to be a fully paid mint, right? And then, hey, FTX came. And we're like, well, fuck it. We're going to a free mint, right? We had to change where this market was because I didn't want you guys get trapped. And this is what you almost want to look for other founders. I'm not saying I made the decision. I'm just giving you the reasoning to our decision. I think it's logical because I've been able to bring this community together without it feeling that I've taken anything away from you. It's only a community that is giving you more and more opportunities that are at either a very fair cost or incredibly low cost. Do you guys realize 99% of you here have paid less than the average gas transaction in the bull market? 99% of you here have spent less than 20 or 35 or $45. I fucking have paid gas over that price, right? In the bull market. That's literally our cost association with majority of you, the vast majority of you. And this is the other beauty in building in Web3 is that you don't need to extract. You don't need to do all of that stuff while still building one of the largest communities in Web3. And this is how we keep pace in a bear market. This is how we as Tribe survive a bear market. This is how Tribe continues to support other projects in different ways. And this is also the beauty of guys like the world's largest, guys like Jungle, guys like Ether, guys like even Dimensionals. These are all projects that are giving us more access to upside, right? While reducing some of the traditional risks that come with this game, right? And this is kind of the thing, right? ICO Beast, he's like, yeah, I used to burn zero point 0.1 to 0.2 E on arbitrage transactions back in 2017. Exactly, right? Those are the crazy days, right? Or silent mode notes, right? I was ready to burn 2 ETH in gas for the other side mint, right? And this is what Tribe has done is that we've gone against the counter narrative, right? We are privileged in some ways because we have raised a little bit of venture capital, right? So it meant that we did not need to extract, but it didn't mean that we stopped. I've raised less capital than 95% of venture-backed companies in this space. Yet we are probably in the 0.001% of Web3 startups that are cash flow positive. That's the brilliance of Tribe. We've still found a way, being born in bear, right? We were born in bear. All this stuff has happened post fucking Other Side Mint, which was the start of the last bear. We've been born in bear, we've grown in bear, we scaled in bear, and we've done it where we haven't fucked you guys over. We haven't. And that's actually the beauty of where Tribe is going is that is real trust. And that's a hard thing to get credit for. And it's not saying that I need your guys' credit, right? But I hope that you recognize that the way we are building is maybe going to give you a reason to trust in Tribe during bear. Evaluate our actions, evaluate and understand how we're trying to deliver you value while reducing risk on your end. And look, how else do we reduce risk? We actually help you due diligence. We bring the entire Something is Minting series, and my God, I know we don't get credit for it, but the amount of ETH we've saved from stupid fucking projects for you guys is also a really hilarious metric. It's hard to measure that, right? Because I don't know how many of you guys were gonna mint something before a SIM series, right? But there's been so many projects that we've been able to identify that were really poor or potentially even, positive on that front. And that's kind of the nice thing here is that, our whole opportunity is to keep de-risking you. Then what did we do? What did we do? How did we go further in a bear? We then gave you a fucking currency that's gas free, has no cost, no way to buy it, just earn through your participation, right? And you could use it to then get whitelist, right? We gave you an entire relic system that allowed you to have these access points. And from there, again, we gave you another opportunity that was de risked, right? There is some risk here. I want to be very transparent. The risk is your time. If you actually don't value these conversations, you're probably in a negative R. This is not worth grinding relics. Like if you're just here for grinding relics, you're gonna hate your life. That ROI is not here. There's so many better ways. But if you value the education, you value sites, you value the community, you value the knowledge, the relics start looking pretty because they're a plus one. They're a plus one to give you that optionality and access here as well, right? And this is kind of the other thing is that this entire market hasn't focused on education. And I agree, Zion. The time spent is educational. At least I hope you guys think it's educational, right? Some of it is entertaining, right? And we have some really cool stuff coming up, right? And I'll share that. But that's actually the biggest thing is that we are focused on trying to de-risk you guys as much as we can. How else do we de-risk? Dude, 80 to 85% of the projects we bring in are also free mints. We prioritize free mints, right? As much as we can. We prioritize it all as fast as we can in every single manner. And that's kind of the other important thing is that all of you guys are going to have this opportunity to still get access to tier one projects, right? Or very low price mints, right? You could see, I mean, again, we might not have taken advantage of it, but we did have some of the largest allocation to ZTX at a pretty low mint price. We had the largest allocation to grapes at a very low mint price, right? We even got airdrops to distribute to our community. This is kind of the beauty of what we're trying to do is that we're really trying to ensure that the risk that we introduced is balanced risk, right? And it's more importantly, it's about you understanding that risk. That's where we go above and beyond at Tribe, right? This is why I still don't hard shill anything with cost. I don't hard shill Ether. I don't hard shill Dimensionals. I don't hard shill any of these projects, right? I really don't. I don't even tweet about these projects, right? Because the truth is I'm not an influencer. I want to be an educator. This is what the entire focus of Tribe is all about. One of the things that many of you know, right, is that you could trust Tribe, right? Because I used to be a teacher. Like, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to bring that entire same framework here for all of you to truly be able to get the knowledge to find where you want to go. And that's the other beauty about Tribe. I do not mind you going to any other projects out there. I do not mind you finding your community, finding your core. Tribe is supposed to be a stepping stone to help you find whatever Web3 tribe you are seeking. We hope it may be our first party projects. We hope it may be one of our village projects. We hope it might be one of our something is minting projects. It does not matter as long as we helped you get there. That's all I care about. If we've helped you get there, there's probably a strong likelihood that you're going to stick around, right? Whether it be helping you find a community, finding ROI, finding the upside, all of that stuff, we're going to bring that to you. And this is where Tribe gets power. Because if I could earn your trust in a bear, and this is our entire operating thesis at Tribe, we want to find your trust in a bear because when the bull comes, we hope to earn your trust and compound that trust with greater access for us all. But I also want to be honest. It's going to take some time. We're going to have to be patient. But what we're going to do while being patient is we're going to be lying. We're going to be like a lion waiting, waiting to pounce on the next opportunity, right? Be ready to react when we see that moment. We will be ready to react when we can scale up. And still, Tribe is putting out more content than any other community out there right now. Tribe is getting you more whitelist allocation than any other community out there right now. Tribe has more partnerships than any other community right now. And this is kind of the big thing here, right? This is the opportunity that we are building. And if we could compound this into the next major window, I think we all are going to be very, very happy with those outcomes. That's what I'm hoping. Because this is what I'm building for, right? Everything I'm building for, right? If I'm giving you my founder lens right here, the founder lens is simple. I believe that if we maintain trust through Tribe, through this bear, when we get to the bull, we have so many unfair advantages. So many unfair advantages, right? We could easily grab the largest community, right? You guys, there's 460 of you here at the moment right now. Like, I could just tell you all the numbers of every other Discord community out there. They do not get these numbers. They don't, right? Which is nuts. No one gets these types of numbers, right? And we're doing it still in the bottom of bear. And what we're going to continue to do is give you guys more access and more opportunities at every level we go. And the reason why we have an advantage is that I haven't taken advantage of you guys. That's the honest truth of this all. Tribe has not taken advantage of you guys and what you're doing. And we are measuring your engagement because we want to reward your engagement. We are measuring how long you've been here because we want to reward your time that you have been here. We are measuring the assets of our partners that you own because we want to reward you for the assets of the partners that you own. We are focusing on all of these elements for one major reason is that we believe this is how you build trust. This is how you build a mutual relationship between builder and community, and where we almost effectively become one. And if we can do that correctly in this bear, we have such an unfair advantage in bull. I'm so confident in that. I'm so confident that if we even maintain, just maintain, not even grow, if we just maintain this community as is, we're good. And a lot of you were here even in the early bull, right? I'm talking about like January 2023. Guys, we were breaking 1,000 in this room, right? 1,000 people, 1,000 concurrents on Twitter Spaces as well. You know we can grow back up to it once the market gets a little bit healthy, because there's very few other markets here that are actually, or very few communities here that are taking this wide funnel approach. And shout out to the other builders who are out there. I don't want to say Tribe is the only one. I want to be very honest, but Tribe is in the very small amount. I'm sure there's other communities you have met that you have connected with that have delivered you some type of similar like value. But I hope that you can see how we connect the dots at Tribe, how we are keeping pace in a bear, and how this will be meaningful for each and every one of you too. So let me just share a little bit of what's happening this week. We are going into a build mode for the next 2 weeks. So you're going to see few less events here as we are getting ready for Soul deployment in October. So Soul deployment will be one of the biggest things that are going out. And additionally, as well, we are getting ready for Tabula Rasa and our comic book vision to also go out next month. These two things are going to be huge priorities for our entity as well. And the brilliant part about this is that they're all optimized for those of you who own a soul, meaning all of you who are here, right? Owning a soul or owning a partner NFT as well. And this is what we're really, really optimizing for in this market. Our challenge now is that can we continue to deliver delight in unexpected ways? And with that, it means that we're going to continue to grow all of our first party projects and sustain them. But we're incredibly patient. We have zero interest in accelerating the launch cycle of any of our projects. If we've waited here for 12 months, we have no problem waiting another 12 months. And I want to be very clear with all of you to understand. And remember, it is our challenge and it is also our upside to get our projects to mint sooner. But we will only launch projects when we think it's not only healthy for us, but more importantly, it's healthy for you. We respect you guys as holders so much that we will not accelerate anything at a point that will come at a discount or a cost or a hit to those of you who've already earned those allocations and earned those opportunities. And because of that, this is all about how we keep pace in a bear. This is bottom of bear. We're still in this bottom. Don't get tricked by one off little blips that are trying to trick you into thinking we're back. We are far from being back. We're not back until you start looking at real core metrics. Core metrics you have to understand in regard to number of unique users in this market, number of actual active buyers in this market, number of actual unique wallets buying and selling in this market. It is an incredibly, incredibly shitty market when you look at those metrics. It is literally near bottom on almost all of those metrics. Do not be fooled when you see short term blips. Focus on sustainable trends. Focus on sustainable growth. Focus and believe that the IP that we are building is going to be some of the most compelling IP to be introduced in the next era. We do not have to wait for a bull market. I want to be very clear, but we sure as hell are not putting it into the bottom of a bear. I respect you guys too much. I respect our artists and team too much. And I respect Tribe as an entity too much to rush anything. But it doesn't mean we stop building. That's the difference. We keep building way, 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 way faster than most. Again, we are sitting on numerous collections. We're sitting on numerous assets. We're sitting on numerous entities. We're sitting on numerous partnerships. There is a pipeline of over 20 people who want to be in Village. There's a pipeline of almost over 50 people who want to constantly be on something is minting. We have pipelines, we have sustainability, we have a line of sight on where our growth is. And why are we able to do this more so than anyone else? Is because we hit cash flow positive. By hitting cash flow positive, we're actually a real business. Everyone else in this market is still fake. They're still fake. They're still trying to find a way until they make it. And this is the biggest challenge here as well, is that you and that's the other thing you want to recognize too, is that there's a huge impact for those who are actually active as soul holders versus those who are not active as soul holders. And that's going to be the other beauty about what we're building. All of us are going to be giving you guys a huge, huge, huge delta in value for those of you who, like I said, we are measuring your activity. Your activity still matters. Your engagement still matters. Your contributions to Web3 still matter. Oath is going to be an incredibly different mint design that you will ever see. And all I can say is, those of you who are here, continually being here, you are all going to be handsomely rewarded in the structure of the mint. The way the mint works is those who engage, those who participate, those who've been here in the trenches since the day one are going to get significantly better features and upside with the mint mechanics. So we don't forget, right? We're not just keeping the value of your oath stale. We're actually managing all of this. And exactly as V. Garcel says, right? Short-term flippers will hate oath. Absolutely. Right. And that's also why we're working. So just let me give you a few updates real quick and then we'll wrap up. We're a little bit over time. But I do love these conversation. All right, number of oath at the moment right now. We'll put the banners up and everything. We just kind of took off a few of these things here, right? Here's where we're at. There's 877 oath at the moment right now. So this number continues to go down. We still have some more ways. We'll bring up the banners. There were just a few errors with our bots. So we're trying to make sure we get this going through here as well. So you're going to see this number probably still keep going down. We have probably a couple more drops here as well as we're doing some really big evals, right? And this next soul mint that you're going to see is going to be so critical. There's probably a good chance Oath is going to drop under 800, just to let you know, right? And what you're going to see is a really interesting design with this upcoming soul claim. This next soul claim that you're going to see in October is going to be a defining moment for Tribe. And here's the best part. It's going to be a defining moment and it will cost you guys nothing but the gas, right? There may be some upsells and other ideas where if you want to get other opportunities, but this soul claim for all of you who've already bought soul, it is effectively a free claim for all of you. And because of that, it's also going to be a significant differentiator in the way that we build for venture value and build value as well. And that's going to be this nice little thing is that you guys are going to see how a team can build in bear, right? Without taking huge amounts of ETH from you. We are super proud that if you only look at Soul Mints, we have taken less than 100 ETH from this market, right? Less than 100 ETH is insane, right? For any project, for the type of value we've given, ETH is nuts, right? And this is kind of the amazing of what we're trying to build, is that this does not require us to turn you into our cash cows. That's not how we look at you. Rather, we look at you as that you are going to help us build the entity's value with your time, collaboration, and your organic buying power, regardless of where you allocate it. Some of you may allocate it to diamonds. Some of you may allocate it to jungles. Some of you may allocate it to ether. Some of you may allocate it to dimensionals. It does not matter as long as we are giving you positive reasons to allocate that to the projects that matter most to you. And this is where we get to a really exciting portion of our journey. And you're going to see a very clear tipping, and you're going to see really clear numbers. So let me give you a few really good insights here. First off, last week, we were able to kind of do a small launch for the world's largest, right? One of our next partners here. I just want to tell you guys, you should be looking at this account. The world's largest is going to give you a pretty good understanding of how many organic users are here in this market to a certain extent. So if you are looking at this tweet, go to this account, right? TWL is intentionally organic. But what's really interesting is we've done no paid UA, no paid marketing. We're doing no manipulation of bots or other users, right? And what we're doing is we're trying to actually find real followers to come. There's no language about follow, retweet, anything like that. It's purely organic. This might be one of the fewest organic launches, right? Ever, right? Like it might be one of the only scene being fully organic at this point. So what's really cool about this is that you could start seeing the metrics of what a real project's launch should look like on Twitter without manipulated numbers, right? And this is kind of the important thing here is that you could look at this and see what is not being manipulated. So two big things I want to call out. So the world's largest first tweet got a ton of retweets, impressions, and likes. And these are all organic, right? Or majorly organic. There's of course always some bots that will come into this. But these are where you could see some of the numbers of what a real launch announcement can look like. But here's the crazy thing. They're doing those numbers with only 3,347 followers, right? Literally 3,347 followers, right? Which is crazy. That's how small this still is. Or I guess 20 or 30 of you just followed. So 3,371 followers. Watch this Twitter. I'm not saying because you watch it because oh they're going to be the next big thing. Of course, I'm really bullish on what Patrick is doing. But what I want you guys to do is watch this because you could use this as a measurement to see what does organic interactions actually look like in this market and what is the size. And dude, the world's largest has some amazing followers behind it. If I was looking at it, hold on, sure I say this correctly, so you're seeing I'm right now looking at all the mutual followers. It's got Frank from De Gods following it. It's got who are the other founders that I saw earlier? Uh, it's got Zagabonds following it. It's got, of course, Joao's following it. Montana's following it from Dynamic XYZ. Who else is following? That's tier one. There's Josh Ong from Boardroom Ventures. So you're already seeing there's some really amazing already on this project that are really solid, and that's organic, right? Which is a really positive sign. So what you want to see in this kind of market